Oh, right. We're live now, Christina. So,
Very
Chris,
excited.
I
Finally.
know, I know. Finally, I mean, the last time we tried to do this podcast, for the listeners, I just had the news literally 2 seconds before the podcast was starting that I had a new granddaughter just arrive in this world. And so I was caught between keeping to my planned podcast with Christina, but with my heart sort of pulling me to celebrating this news with my wife and my family. And Christina, I mean, given the subject of your master's, lead from the heart, you said it was a no brainer. Go away, Phil. And this is why we're here 2 weeks later or so. So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate.
No, come on. I would have anything else would have been very strange, right? Is go. This is life. This is what life's about. That's the real heart, right? A
It
child,
is.
a new child, a newborn. That is a
I
true
know.
innocence and pure heart. So actually, I was very genuinely happy. I almost
Yeah.
felt part of it. You still have to send me a picture, though.
Oh, yes, I haven't sent you a picture. I promise you I'll do that. I really will. But I think all newborn babies, they take a while to begin to look more beautiful, if you like. To us, of course. Little Clara is an absolute darling, and no, I will definitely send you a picture. So anyway, I really did appreciate it because as someone, I hate canceling meetings. I just hate doing it, and I was torn for a split second. I was torn with continuing, as planned, uh, but then, I spoke to you about it, and of course, it was a no-brainer. Phil, why should you even hesitate?
No, absolutely. I think that I understand the business part of it, canceling
Yeah,
meetings, you're thinking about the time of the other person. But what is
yeah,
more important in life than
yeah,
something that has to do with your family? There is a
yeah,
saying.
correct.
I heard it in Spanish. I'm gonna try to translate, so it's not gonna sound as
Yes,
well. But it's something like the most important thing in life is that the most important thing is the most important thing. So you cannot
okay.
say, if you ask people, what is the most important thing in life? They'll say family, health, right? That's what
Yeah, yeah,
everyone will, 99% will say that. And then you cannot put any work thing on top of the most
on top of
important thing. So, first things first, and family, of course, that's just
yeah.
pure happiness.
Yes, it really was, yeah. Well, that's very, very, very kind of you, and, of course, entirely appropriate, given the subject of your master's. Now, um, with the sales podcast transformation series, we always start with, explaining to the listeners who you are, who is the person that we've invited onto the podcast. And so, of course, we can tell from the Spanish, the accent, that maybe there's a connection there, but I'm not sure if you are from Spain. Is that right?
So let me tell you, because it's a little bit of a strange story. So I was
Okay.
born in Germany,
Okay.
but I am originally from Colombia, South America.
Right.
And
Okay.
now, since for the past 6 years, I've been living in Spain. I absolutely love it. So basically, I have my mother tongue is German. My
Okay.
my passport, my dancing skills are Colombian, and my parents as
Okay.
well. Fortunately, the dancing skills.
Okay. Okay.
But my heart right now, my work, my heart, and everything I've built now is in Madrid, in Spain. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a mixture of cultures, which means I'm
Yeah.
a very open, extroverted, but punctual, kind of organized Colombian German kind of person, if you can if you
So
can
you've
say it like
picked
that.
you've picked the best out of each culture you've been in. I can see that, you know.
That's what I want
Uh,
to think. Yeah.
that's what you've done, and I think that's the advantage that you have of sort of living quite an international life in many ways, you know,
Yeah.
not just traveling internationally, but I mean living in a country is a privilege
Yeah,
and,
no, absolutely. It
yeah,
teaches you so many things. For instance, respect. There's so
yeah,
much difference in the cultures, even though we're all people and we're all human and we all want the things, the different approaches on things are completely different. So
yes.
respect, adaptability, right? Every
Yeah,
time
yeah.
I travel to another country and I start a new life is starting over, building your reputation, and it's also the cool thing, right? Who do you want to be this time? I think the core basics are always the same, the values, the
Yeah,
ethics, your education,
yeah.
but you always get the chance to do something different and be a little bit different, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in a way, you know, my childhood was a little similar to yours. You know, I was born in Sentin Island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I may have explained this to you, and then moved to Malta, and then to Yemen, and then
Oh,
Sierra Leone, and
wow.
then Qatar,
Oh,
and
wow.
then Trinidad. And, you know, it's funny, I felt a little bit of a nomad, but I completely understand what you said about respect because I think in each country that we lived in, you know, you recognize that in a way you're a guest of that country and it has its own cultures and systems and you ideally need to respect that and so I think that's one thing that I've perhaps picked up as well, the idea that you're a guest in someone else's home when you're living in someone else's country, you know, even if you're there for a couple of years, as was my case. But you know, before we get into the masters, though, I mean, you start off your masters project by referring back to your grandfather, who clearly was a hugely important person in your life and has influenced you. So, would you mind just going back to who he was and why was he such an amazing influence on
Oh, come on,
who Christine is
absolutely.
today?
If I have the chance to talk about the person I most admired in my entire life, I will use that
Oh,
opportunity to talk with
okay.
proudness. So let me talk about my grandfather. He was a Colombian. He was born in Colombia. You might know that Colombia, in difference to European countries, is a very poor country. So the
Yeah.
majority of the population is very poor. There is a big gap between rich and poor. And I call rich and poor not only on money, but on access to opportunities. So if you are on the upper end, let's call it like that, you will have access to education, you will have access to university. So it's kind of sad
Hmm.
if you think about that huge gap because this lower end, which is a huge part of the population, they will
Yeah.
not have access to that. If they don't have access, how are we going to get better, right? So my
Yeah.
grandfather came from that lower end, but he
Hmm.
worked really, really, really hard doing lots of jobs. I remember he was telling me stories that he self taught himself to read. Don't ask me how. For
Okay.
me, he's just a
Well,
genius. But he
yeah.
said he was reading magazines, looking at pictures, and his first job was at jail. So he went to jail to read letters to the prisoners, all of those
Okay.
officials' letters.
Amazing.
And that was his first job. He was still a
Wow.
child, at that time. Many, many years ago, there was no child labors and so on. He was just trying to survive. And with that money, he could go to a school, local school. And then he was so good that he got a scholarship in one of the best universities in
Wow.
Colombia. And to make the long story short, he became one of the most famous entrepreneurs and lawyers of Colombia. He built huge companies, very famous ones, very big ones that are now have been sold and they are limited but super big companies, some of them even
Yes.
multinationals. But that's already impressive. But the reality
Yeah.
and the real thing that I loved about him is that we grew up, we didn't know about it. We didn't know how what luxury was. He was never a guy who had a lot of luxury. We didn't have cars
Hmm.
and so on. But we did have a lot of service around the houses. So first of all, let me explain a little bit. It's more normal in Colombia to have service
Yeah.
because it's cheaper, let's say it like that. But if you are a person who is important in Colombia, you will have to have bodyguards. And if you have a big house, then you have different people who are
Yeah.
helping you at home, right? And we did
Hmm.
live in kind of a farmhouse. So it was huge, and we had a lot of people helping out. And I remember growing up with their children. So they were part of the family. I never got the feeling that we are here and you are there serving me. The contrary, we were sitting in the same table. It was a children's table. That's where we had food. We were all had access to gifts during Christmas because he was giving gifts to everyone. So I never knew there was a difference in anything.
Hmm.
And the best part about it is he paid for everyone's um, university and school, so that lower
Hmm.
end could now have children in school, in university, and doing something for themselves. And some of those children
Wow.
grew up and they are now working and earning a good life. So for me, that was the most impactful thing, because obviously when I grew up and I went to university, I understood, yes, there is a
Yeah.
difference. Yes, we were different, but I never had that feeling. And for me, that taught me how to be humble, how to care, how to understand that a title or money is nothing. It is what you do with
Hmm.
it that brings you somewhere.
Yeah.
And he has been my inspiration. And if I can add one more thing, he was so in love with my grandmother. He
Okay.
Every day he used to say, looked at my grandmother and said, "Oh Maria, you're the most beautiful woman in this world. How was I so lucky?" So imagine, that's what I grew up to, and it was
Wow.
really, really cool. Yeah, so he is definitely the guy, the person, the human I look up to the
Wow.
most.
That's a most incredible story, and what a person. Yeah, it makes me want to read up about him more. But what an yeah, and it makes total sense. I think in a way that he was the introduction to your masters about and perhaps the reason why you chosen the subject that you did,
No,
which I
absolutely.
which I think we should come on to now. Um, so talk us through. Just talk us through. You were doing, you were involved in this 2-year master's program. You got to the final dissertation that you were doing, and then your chosen topic is leading with heart. Can a happy team achieve better business results? So I can kind of understand how how this topic is very much connected with the story you've just shared. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, I have obviously many thoughts, and I get so passionate that it's difficult to kind of structure my
Yeah.
way to give you a good answer. But let me try to put all of those emotions that are coming right now into a strict order. Let's say it like that, a
Okay.
German order.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
first
Right. This
is
is the German side, is it
this
coming
is the
through
germ.
now?
Let's see how it comes out. Maybe this,
Okay.
maybe. Anyhow, so when I think about myself, and I'm sorry to talk about me in the first sentence,
That's
right? But
no.
I'm a hardworking person. I'm ambitious. I am super passionate about everything I do, and I understood really early, let's say it like that, that my performance has a direct impact, hopefully positive, right, on the business, right? So that's clear. And this is how, when you're a manager, you have a team of people and you see them as impact on business. If they perform right, business will go good. That's it,
Yeah.
right? But what I what I was striving for, I- what really struck me hard is when you are a manager, you become very, very aware that the way you lead can leave a mark on people, can have an impact, especially on younger generations, on their confidence, on their growth, on their development. How many times have you thought about a good leader that you had or a good manager and say, oh, I remember that person gave me this advice, and this is why now I do this and that. So imagine how important it is to be a good leader if you're actually impacting someone else's life, right? So
Hmm.
that's when I thought this needs to be more than just impact on business, return on investment, right? So that was
Right.
my first thought. And now the next thing is, I genuinely, when I thought about my grandfather and him being so successful, and he was such a hard person that he was so humble that I could never put him in the same phrase as aggressive
Hmm.
executive CEO of multi-million companies. That was like, no, it's not, it's no way. There's so, but he was still successful. So for me it was really important to understand if you could put leadership with heart in the same sentence as business. So if we look
Hmm.
back at when I wrote this, I started researching on leadership, and you heard about democratic leadership, situational leadership, transformational leadership,
Hmm.
bureaucratical leadership, even leading by example. But I never heard heart and business in the same sentence. On the contrary, I always heard, no, no, emotions stay at home. The heart is something else. Business is business. This is everything I heard. And I said, but why? Why can there be heart? Heart means caring.
Hmm.
Hearts mean authentic. Heart means caring about what you do, the people you're working with. Why is there leadership with heart? It's not nowhere, right?
Hmm.
Now afterwards we start hearing about Simon Sinek and a lot of, so this has become like a trend or something everyone is talking about. But a few years back, if you remember, that was not
Hmm.
everywhere. If you add to that that I am working in technology, and I was when I joined SAP, the company I'm working for, I was the only woman in a team of 25 men, very senior men. I was young and Colombian and a girl, I was like the little girl. And all of my role models, including my grandfather, they were males, and
Hmm.
some of them were very hyper masculine. They had hyper masculine leadership styles. I don't know if that's a word, but
Yeah.
I hope you understood me.
Yeah. I
So
do.
that
Yeah.
was my role model. And then there were a few women that, in my eyes, they were very aggressive. They even looked and acted and they dressed like very aggressive. And I said to myself, it can't be only me. I cannot be like that. That's that I want to be a leader. I want to be a manager. I want to
Hmm.
have a team. But if that's what it takes, then sorry, I'm not built of that. But then I said,
Mm.
I'm not that special. It's impossible. There are not more people that think like me. And this is when I said, you know what, let's use this opportunity of this masters,
Mm.
and let's make the most out of it. Maybe let's prove that you can put leading heart in the same sentence as return on investment and
Yeah.
performance. So that's what I did.
That's what you did, and no, it's quite interesting as you talk about different role models, and I think we've all experienced being managed well and not so well. And I do remember in my sort of earlier sales career, I had a manager, and and he came into the office, my office one day, or into the office, and he sat on the desk and he looked at me and he said, Phil, if you want to be successful in business, you've got to be a, well, I don't know if I can use this word. Starts with S and finishes with T.
Can
Okay.
imagine.
I was astonished, and this comes back to this sort of alpha male type, sort of characteristics which you mentioned earlier on. And I must admit, I've always questioned whether there was another way, to get there. So I'm absolutely thrilled that you've chosen to have challenged, I think, a lot of the um, perceived thing or the current thinking about what it takes to be a successful manager. And I just love the fact you've addressed it. And of course, being a woman in sales, you're one of a minority, particularly in the technology sector. And I think your own personal success story, which we'll come on to later, I think, sort of speaks for itself. But let's come back to the masters. So you've got the subject, yeah. You've started doing some kind of research into looking what's out there, I guess. Books that might have influenced you and so on. So when you embarked on this journey, of course, having these three words together, leading, heart, and ROI, you found there wasn't a lot out there. Is that right? Not a lot of research on connecting those words together.
So the the easy answer is no, and I want to add an
Yeah.
anecdote to that. Is
Okay.
I
Okay.
had a manager at the time, a person I really like him, I genuinely do, and I told him I'm gonna do my master's. I was super excited. I wanted to share with him. It was also required by the masters. You have to explain your manager, your this and
Yeah.
that. You have to have the mentor and so buy-in, right? And I
Yeah.
explained to this manager what I wanted to do. And his response was, "You are too emotional. You will never get anywhere." And now
Oh,
I am the manager of 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 his manager. Something like that.
okay.
So for
Okay.
me, it was super interesting, and I genuinely like him. I'm not saying this in a revengeful way, at least not in a bad revengeful way, but in a
Yeah.
way that I was like, you know what? It's actually a super opportunity that nobody believes in this, because it
Yeah.
gives me more energy to prove, it gives me more energy to research, and it gives me the passion for the topic, because I cannot be the only person in this 7 billion humanity that thinks like
Yeah.
me. This is impossible, right? So I started doing my research, and I came across some names that are now my favorite authors. And
Yes.
you said it well, my Spanish accent mixed with English. Not sure I'm gonna do a good
No,
I'm
no.
gonna pronounce it correctly, but let me try. Is Kuses and Posner? Did I
Yeah.
say it right?
Yeah.
Kind
Kuz and
of.
Posner. We sometimes don't pronounce the final two letters, but that's fine. Kuz and Posner.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I really genuinely like them. I in my LinkedIn page, I have a phrase for them that starts hard. You have to have hard. And I really like how they phrase how you have to be honest, inspirational, competent, fair-minded, supported. So this is what I started reading, and I started getting really excited because they are not the newest, they are not super new, they already had
Hmm.
thought about this topic. So I was happy reading them. They were a huge part of my thesis, of my master's. And then there was Susan Steinbrecher and Joel Bennett. um a heart-centered leadership was their title, so I was happy, like, okay, I'm
That's
not, you
yeah.
see,
That's good.
I'm not the only one. I knew someone. I'm not creating this. There was someone who already thought about this. And I also like very, very much how they phrase and they talk about how you have to keep the core values from your ancestors, and the ethics, and then add modern techniques to it. And I said, yeah,
All right.
because there are some things that come from generations of education and those core values, that ethics and that education, that's what should be there, right? And then you can put all of
Mm,
these new additions and modern findings, of course, to it. So those were my go-to authors. I really
okay.
genuinely like them and recommend them. And then, of course, Simon Sinek started to be super. There was a hype on over Simon Sinek, and who doesn't love Simon Sinek, right? So easy to
Right.
hear, easy to listen.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I also think that even though the topics are not completely related, they are a good basis to leading with heart. And for me, I'm genuinely interested in everything around positive psychology, neuroscience, and everything that is about becoming. I have like this constant need of how can you become a better person, right? So all
Mm,
of those books really inspired me and helped me, of course, during
yeah.
my masters.
Are you ever unhappy?
Am I ever honest?
I can't imagine. I'm looking at you now and I'm just thinking, I don't think I've ever seen Christina unhappy. I mean,
So
which,
that's very funny that you say it, because in my company, they always ask me, what do I put on my coffee every morning? And they call me
okay,
the happiest employee every time.
okay, I
And,
know.
and, and they
Yes.
measure them. The COO of the region, he always measures himself to me. So he's like, someone will ask him, how are you? And he says, in a scale from 1 to Christina, today I'm doing really good. So it's really funny. So, to answer your question, they say that happiness is not state, it's moments, right? But my moments
Yeah.
are continuously happy. So I think I'm genuinely a
Oh,
happy
wow.
person.
Wow. That's
And I
fantastic.
it doesn't mean I'm not sad. It doesn't mean I don't have
Yeah, yeah.
problems sometimes. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
sometimes I want to throw everything out of the window and just says sleep for 3 days because I'm so tired. But
yeah.
I genuinely believe, and I'm not sure if I'm wrong, but this is how it works for me. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Two things. First is we are used to calling everything a problem. And I think
Right.
there are problems and then there are conflicts. And once you
Okay.
learn to differentiate problems from conflicts you can resolve, right?
Okay.
Problems you can also, but it takes time, effort. So, what is a problem for me? You know, something, an illness. That's a problem.
Okay.
That's something you need. Wow, okay, let's do
Yeah,
this. We're
yeah.
gonna do it. Something that happens in traumatic or a tragedy in your family. That's a problem. The rest, conflicts. You don't like someone in the office, conflict. You have an issue, conflict. You didn't sell what you wanted to sell, conflict. You can all resolve that. So this is my
Okay.
first, let's say, I don't know if rule is a word, but my lemma.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is very important for me because I think language makes makes a difference, right? If you're telling
Mm,
yourself all the time, oh, another problem, another problem, another problem, it's impossible that you're happy. Too many problems and happiness cannot go in the same sentence, right? But if you have maybe one problem that you're working on and it's your challenge, and then a few conflicts, you can't be happy. So that's the
okay.
first. Separate problems from conflicts. And the second thing, and this is also genuine, and this is what my circumstances in life have taught me, because I've gone through a big illness, let's say it like that.
Yes,
But
yes, you, yeah.
yeah, so I am a survivor, but I'm happy
Well
to
done.
say it. I say this with this smile in my face. And what I learned is that you cannot control what's happening to you, what life throws at you. You can't. And if you
Hmm.
want to control that, you're going to suck all your energy and it's going to be very difficult to be happy. The only thing you can control is the attitude towards
Hmm.
what gets thrown at you. That when you know that, and you can control that, then it's something, right? It's like, okay, at least I can do this, and I can be positive, and I can choose to be optimistic, and I can choose to fight this, and I can choose to stay alive, and I can choose to make
Hmm.
my family not worried. So that those are the little things that help you confront, fight, whatever you want to call it, those problems. And that's when you realize that, then you're happy. Then you can smile and
That's
be
great.
optimistic, which doesn't mean you're not realistic.
Okay, well, that's a great answer. So I
A
really,
long
really
answer.
enjoyed that. It's a long, no, no, it's a great one. No, I think I'm such a great believer in a sort of this positive mental approach. And if you visualize something also strongly enough, very often you can get what you want at the end of the day. But no, I agree, and I think it's just it's a wonderful approach to life, and obviously it's standing you in very good stead. When you were doing this project, were you worried at all that you wouldn't, you wouldn't your thesis, if you like, which is so strongly sort of based on what you have observed in your grandfather and so on, actually you wouldn't really get a result from it, maybe, or did you ever think that it might not give you the answers that you're looking for, or did you just have this beautiful belief that you were gonna get that?
so so the good thing is that because there was literature on it, and
Okay,
I thought, like, okay, if there's literature, if there's books, and if there's bestsellers, they're smarter than me, that's for sure.
okay,
And if smarter people than me did it already, then it's, I don't know,
okay.
the failure uh, it can be minimal, right? So
Yeah, yeah, but there's only 2 books, it's not like, if you looked at any other leadership, situational leadership, you'll have sort of, 1,000,000 research papers on it, but not 1,000,000 on leading with heart, probably.
But it's an evolution, right?
It's an
So
evolution.
it's an
Yeah,
evolution.
absolutely.
It's the era we're in. You see, we were talking
Yeah,
before about females and males. Now we have
yeah,
much more females in the workplace, in leadership positions. So it's an evolution. And for me,
yeah,
bringing the heart into business, it's part of this evolution. So someone
yeah.
smarter than me already started. So I was a firm
Okay.
believer that I was going to get something out of it. And
Yeah.
if I didn't, um, I'm a rebel. So I was going to do it my way anyway until someone fires me, which hasn't happened.
Yeah, yeah. No, they
Yeah,
haven't.
absolutely. So, yeah, that's the reality
Okay.
of your
Okay.
question and
So
my answer.
brilliant. So how did you go about your research then? Because you studied the books, you realized there were people out there producing some interesting research on the similar topics and connected topics, and you then went about sort of collecting research, I guess. So could you just talk us through what you did to substantiate your final conclusions that we'll come on to later? But just, yeah, how did you collect information and data?
Yeah, so obviously you said the first books, readings, videos, and Simon Sinek research papers. All of that was a
Okay.
very good basis. But then, because this master's was 2 years long, and I
Yeah.
was transforming myself, let's say it like that, because when
Yeah.
I joined the masters, I got recently appointed as a manager, right? So,
Yeah.
one of the best things that this masters gave me, because I'm very, very thankful and grateful for it, because it's a learning for life, it was the transformation from the inside out. So let me explain this.
Hmm.
I've done other masters which are very interesting, of course. You learn a lot, But the typical way of those masters is you read on a topic, you do a business case, you do a group activity, you solve a business problem, right? This is how it
Yeah.
goes, and you learn a lot of techniques. This masters, what was really the heart of it for me is it's a little bit different. It says something like stop, look inwards, analyze your practice. What are you doing? And then
Mhm.
see if that is working or not. For me, that was the biggest learning, the most transformational of all. And how does this tie to your question? Is that from that moment on, I started to be very present and very self aware during my entire practice as a newly appointed manager,
Mhm.
seeing whether uh, my theories or my the things I wanted to do were having a good response or not. So I
Brilliant.
started doing very small things that had a lot of positive impact. I'll tell you a few, but I also did some things that were a failure, right? And I'm going to speak about
Okay.
that as well. And that was really cool because I could measure, if you can call it like that,
Yeah.
what is from the heart and has a good impact, what is from the heart but I'm completely wrong about it and I need to learn about it as well. And so during these 2 years, I genuinely transformed from a hyper performance manager to what I think is a leader. And obviously, I'm still learning. I'm not that
Mhm.
arrogant to say that I'm 2 years, I was a leader. No, but at least I became someone who I was really proud of because
Mhm.
my team was growing, not because of me, because my team was growing, developing, and being the star. So, to your question, that was a really important part of my
Mhm.
discoveries. And what I learned is being very self aware goes back to my introduction. What you do can have an impact on people. You need to be very aware. Everything you say can have a positive or a negative impact. I know people will tell me, no, 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 that's what your father and mother need to do at home. But in the
Yeah.
workplace, it's the same, right? And I remember my first one-on-one meetings. I didn't know what one-on-one meetings were,
Yeah.
right? They tell you you managers do one-on-one meetings, and I'm like, okay, let's do one-on-one meetings. What is that, right? So the usual, yeah, how are you? Fine. How are you? The sales going? Are you doing this good? Are you under any help? Nah. And then I started saying, okay, this is not. What's the impact? I'm not getting anything out of it. What is that person getting out of it? Nothing. So I started doing something very small, which was closing my laptop, sitting on the not on the boss seat, but on their side. So I had a desk with the what I call the
Mhm.
boss chair, and then
Yeah.
everyone was sitting in front. And I skipped that and I sat right next to them, level, eye level.
Yeah.
Being a manager is just a title. It doesn't come with an infusion of being more wise. No, you are
Okay.
equals. Let's say it like that. And we
Mhm.
sit down and I looked them in the eye, in the eyes, and I said, how are you?
Mhm.
Oh no, yeah, well, yesterday we sold. No, no, no. So I don't care if you sold or not right now. How are you? how? And then the reaction
Mhm.
was totally different. And then we started building this trust relationship, and I started seeing people as people, not
Mhm.
as performance for business improvement. And the
Got it.
response to them was really opening themselves. And when
Mhm.
you have this trust relationship with your manager, with your leader, with that person that is there, right, then you start having this confidence to say, today I'm not good, I need help here. Or on the other
Mhm.
way is, for you I will do anything. What do we have to do? Let's do this. So that was really, really cool. And then I also experienced some failures, which, thanks to the masters, it was a huge eye opener. And I think you know what I'm going to say. And that
I'm not
is
sure actually.
that is the coaching topic.
Okay.
Yeah. So imagine a little bit of how I became a manager, and I am very aware. I'm talking about myself, but it's important to make a point. I was a high performing individual. So my
Mhm.
entire life it was about proving myself to me, to my family, to everybody, the only woman in a man's culture. And I was this little smiley person. So I had to prove myself. This is what I thought, right? Like I was objective, perform, execute, deliver. Again, next one. This was me. So when they asked me, "Can you please be a manager?" and I said, "Why me?" They said, we want to have Christinas everywhere." And I was like, "You want more people like me? Oh yeah, let's do this." So my first thing was, everyone has to be like me. Imagine how crazy that is. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. Not
That
sure how many people could
that
could reach that Christina scale.
No, no, you
Yeah,
don't want that. You don't want that. Anyhow,
yeah.
one of those topics was coaching. And when I
Right.
heard coaching a lot, and for me it was this very stupid concept, right? Like, why would you sit someone with someone, explain a problem, and then that person is asking you questions? High performing
Yeah,
person like me, I've already looked for the answer here, there, there. If I'm going to use, because I need your help, right? So I
yeah,
was when it was the coaching master's module,
yeah.
I was like, oh my God. Of course, you cannot like everything, right? Not everything is perfect, but let's get this through, right? And I was like, I never don't believe in this coaching, maybe mentoring, but coaching, asking questions. This is so stupid. And then I had my first coaching. It was a role play. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
The
It
fishbowl exercise. Yeah.
blew my mind. It made me realize that there is a different way of looking at problems. There are blind
Mm.
spots that you don't know. But the most important part is, if you look at the problem of another person from your eyes, you will solve the problem as you would. Then the other person will not learn, will not grow, will not
Hmm.
develop. It is like telling you or your son how to educate his child. You are a father, you had children, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
another situation, another time, you know your children. He knows his children. He'll have to learn how to educate. You can give them
Hmm.
some guidance, but you cannot tell them how to do it. It's the same. And that was for me, I don't know the words. I'm just gonna make it blind, mind blowing. That
Yeah,
was super nice experience, because in my practice, I was telling people from the bottom of my heart how to solve the problems.
yeah.
And then I understood, not working, not working. And I
Okay.
have a very cool anecdote to prove it, but I'm conscious of the time, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna let
yeah.
you
No,
guide
I
us.
know. No, I was told by Louis Sutton actually to well, I wonder if the coaching experience would come up, and you've certainly done that.